to our employees, it is a bit higher than the 1.9%. However, from the other areas, there was initiatives to try and contain costs, resulting in a net impact of 1.9%. And if I can just also highlight that this is coming from a base where, if you look at 2018, there would have been zero increase altogether, and we then move with an increase of 1.9%. This is an area that we are focusing on still, given the post-COVID environment we're going to have to operate in, basically to look for opportunities to be more efficient without reducing the activity. This then resulted in earnings before interest and tax, which basically indicates the revenue, or rather the cash generation that Transnet at net basis would have delivered, of 34 billion, up 0.7%. And we do look at margins in terms of this ratio, which is a bit down to 45.3 from 45.6. On the net profit line, Chair, what happened is that we show that we still made a decent profit of 3.9 billion rands in the current financial year, or the year ended 2020. However, in comparison to the prior year, this is a 34% decrease. And if you look at the reasons behind that, the 2019 financial year had some fair valuation of assets that we had to do, which basically brought an increase, which was a once-off. And therefore, if you normalize the numbers and remove that, which was that one particular year, year on year, we see a drop of 2.5 excluding that, but it's still a profit for the year. As indicated, some of the challenges that we see, it is the sluggish economic growth, which does challenge the volume movement, but also issues around the GCE mentioned some of the theft issues that we are dealing with that does affect the speed at which we are able to deliver and move goods. Chair, we continued to invest in the business, capital expenditure of 18.6 billion, which is a 3.5% increase from the prior year. And this capital investment, we split it into how much we would have used to maintain the assets, which is about 15 billion, and basically to look for new opportunities and expansion, which was about 3 billion of that number. Much as it is lower than our aspiration in the corporate plan, it is still a significant investment. And Transnet continues to be a cash generative business, having generated 35.9 billion rands. This is a critical number in the context, Chair, that we are a self-sustaining business from our internally generated funds. We also work with the capital markets in raising money locally and internationally. And this basically has assisted us in ensuring that we don't look for any support from the shareholder and no guarantees largely in the funding we have. I think the little in our funding that is guaranteed happened around 1999, and the amount is only 3.9 billion, but the cash generation internally is of great assistance in supporting our operations. And that talks then to our gearing ratio, which is at 47.6%. Basically, that is how much our balance sheet has been leveraged to get more activity going. And we also measure the cash interest cover, which was at 2.9 times. Now, this ratio, we've got an agreement with the lenders that we will not go below 2.5. And as it can be seen in this ratio, we are about 0.4 times better than what the lenders expect. In terms of our personnel cost, Chair, we continued to invest in our employees through training. So if you look at our income statement and the money spent on personnel, 2.7% went to training of our artisans, the engineers, as well as the technicians. We are a level 2 BE entity. And in the current year under review, we spent about 31 billion basically on the measured procurement expenditure, which basically is significant in the context, and we continue to look for opportunities in this area. Chair, in slide number 16, without spending a lot of time on it, this is basically to give a sense of the makeup of our revenue. As GCE indicated, TFR is our significant business and contributed in the last financial year 51% in total of the revenue that we have reported. And the other ODs also operated, contributed, but not at the same level as TFR. But if we look at the volumes at the right-hand side of this slide, we do see that the volumes were fairly flat, both for petroleum as well as the port containers, if you compare year on year, 2019 and 2020. But if you look at the rail volumes, largely on the iron ore as well as coal, fairly flat, which basically does talk to the sluggish economic growth as well. But you then see a distinct year on year when you look at general freight business, where we moved in 2019 about 84.7 million tons, and in 2020 only 81. So that's like over 3 million tons lower than the prior year. And therefore, some of the focus areas are about how we deal with these issues. On the cost, that largely our personnel costs contribute about 57% in our operating costs, followed. And you would see that when we talk to the period of COVID, where we had a complete lockdown, largely our personnel costs are fixed, because as much as we had a lockdown for the significant part of the first half of the year, we continued to keep the employees in our salary bill, and it remained flat in the expenditure for the year. But it's a significant contributor in the bill. In areas of improvement, we are looking to manage over time. We are looking to manage any discretionary expenditure. I mean, with COVID, we've learned that we don't need to travel as much, and we would basically see some improvement in terms of the cost line. On the next slide, Chair, just to highlight a bit on our balance sheet movement and the assets that we have. Much as we see that we've had to invest and increase the value of the assets, with the current impact of the sluggish economic growth, we do see that our assets have actually lost some value, reducing the balance sheet's valuation. It's an area that we are also focusing on, because we believe if we can improve on the performance in terms of the volumes, the balance sheet would be impacted positively as well. Chairperson, if I quickly move to the funding, as I indicated, that we fund on the strength of our balance sheet. Over the past financial year, we've managed to raise from capital markets about 11.8 billion, and we repaid 13 billion in the financial year. And all the amounts that were due to our lenders we paid as required. We continue to work with the lenders, even in the context of COVID, to basically ensure that we align and we strengthen the relationship to grow the economy. In terms of the rating, we work with Moody's as well as S&P as our rating agencies, and Chair, we have frequent conversations with them. Recently, we've had a visit, and really it is basically to engage and give them a sense of comfort that the lender's money is safe with Transnet, and we continue to have such engagements. And you would see that in terms of the Moody's, we are largely at the level, in fact, both the sovereign rating, but they do look at us as a standalone, and therefore the conversations are always ongoing with the rating agencies. I would like to just spend a minute or so, Chair, on the PFMA requirements and the qualification, and we have put slide 21 just to make the committee align with us on that. We are quite aware of our responsibility in terms of the PFMA requirements, that we should at all times prevent any fruitless, wasteful expenditure, manage any criminal conduct and put controls in place to manage any PFMA reportable irregularities. And it is an area of focus, and I think the chairperson started commenting that if you look at the financial statements of Transnet, the reasons that we are qualified is that the auditors were not comfortable that we have reported all the irregular expenditure that has occurred. And chairperson, this is an issue that comes from as early as 2018, when the first qualification of Transnet financial statements happened. And at that point in time already, the board, working with management, put together a remedial plan to try and manage the issues around what caused this irregular expenditure. Chairperson, the remedial plan has actually assisted to identify the issues and the causes, and a lot of work has happened. And you would see that if you compare the financials of Transnet 3 years back to the financials of Transnet in 2020, significant reporting has happened, and significant amount of irregular expenditure has been reported. But important to highlight is that this irregular expenditure as required is dating as far back as 2012, as some of the issues that would not have been reported in the past needed to be reported when the auditors raised the issues. And we continue to look for strengthening our controls and making sure that we report to ensure that we can rid ourselves of this continuing qualification. So the remedial plan assisted greatly, but it was not nearly enough to identify everything that needed to be identified for the auditors to be comfortable that we have reported all the issues. What we have done, Chair, if I can highlight some of the issues and progress made, is that, as GC indicated, we now have a fully populated executive structure with permanent employees, whilst in the past there was a number of acting positions, and that assists in giving accountability to everybody and ensuring everybody takes accountability to watch out for PFMA issues. Also, the chief procurement and all these matters around PFMA emanate from procurement processes. Chair, we now have a procurement officer, but also we have removed the reporting lines from finance to strategy in terms of the procurement role that assists us to strengthen the segregation of duties. The chief internal auditor is another critical role because for the longest time, Transnet had outsourced this service, which is quite critical as a third line of defense before the auditors come. And a lot of work is going to happen to assist us in this area, Chair. And lastly, if I can just highlight as well that in strengthening these controls, we are looking for automation opportunities to ensure that we can improve the speed of identifying these issues and improving on them, but also the training of our employees to understand, because there's been lots of changes and new people coming in, while some people have left their organization. So there's a lot of focus to basically improve and strengthen the internal control and oversight in this area. Chair, as a result, we still have a qualification, but it is our endeavor to basically get out of that space. And lastly, as indicated by the GCE for 2021, we are still in a closed period as our financials are being reviewed by the Auditor General. We are working towards releasing them before we close for the December break. And the performance itself will be driven really by the post-COVID and the closure that we experienced largely in the first quarter. But we will come to the committee with more details as soon as we've gone through our internal governance processes. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Are you done, Transnet?
Yes, Chair, we are done with the presentation.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may, Honourable Chair, if I may, we were also just wanting to give a little bit of time. Should the other board members on the call like to make a few statements as well?
I think you're allowed to do any parts that you feel you have not properly presented, or if there are any other people who want to add something, I think we can give you that time. Unless you are you will depend. I mean, you want now to get the questions, and then perhaps you expand from there. But if you still have areas where you think you still need to put more flesh, I can allow you.
No, on our side, Chair, as the executive, we are fine. Sorry.
No, I was just saying maybe as board members, we will assist in responding to the questions should the need arise.
Okay, thank you. Honorable members, that's where we are now. I think we have received this comprehensive presentation presented by the Transnet team. Can we engage? I will do as I normally do, take people according to the list I have in front of me. With immediate effect, I will ask Honorable Gumede to kickstart.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
am I audible?
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Yeah, Chair, I won't have much to ask. Firstly, I wish to accept and note the report and further say it wasn't bad as one would in fact have expected. I'm as well impressed with the programs that they are undertaking as the entity, as well as that they seem to be up to date with the repayments. There are, however, a bit of concern, Chair, that on the side of irregular expenditure. I was a bit worried. I counted the years, that it's almost 8 years that this thing started in 11-12, that is 2011-2012. My worry is why didn't whether the internal or the auditor could not pick it up until it was established in 2018. It's a bit of concern. We don't want to lose faith on internal auditors as well as the external, because if all this was happening a year after year in terms of procurement, that's not in fact a good thing. I think that's the concern that one will have, as well as the other concern comes from it's still in the same year, the elements of the state capture. That's the one that in fact I would like to find out from the entity, that how can they contain it, as well. The most things that are worrying the entity, it's more on theft as well as moving from roads to rail. Otherwise, Chair, I'm quite satisfied with the report. It's promising. I hope they won't kind of regress. It's a forward ever, backward never, so that they always remain. We just wish that because of the programs that they have, we take this entity as one which is amongst the ones that we prioritize. We are not saying that we're not prioritizing others. The main fear that we have as a committee is a situation where we don't want to be the victims of a committee that would have killed the SOEs, but it will have a very better legacy in a sense that if all those that the weak entities become stronger in our presence, that's a good legacy that we leave, Chair. Otherwise, I'm happy with the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Gumede. In the absence of Honorable Kachalia, can I have Honorable Marais?
Thank you, Chairperson. I just must put forward for Khalepi's apology. You have two other very urgent meetings to attend this morning. I just want to highlight two issues as well, as my previous colleague has said here on the committee. It's all about the recovery of funds from illegal contracts approved as far as state capture is concerned, as we had as a previous committee this long hours of engaging with people from Transnet and Eskom. And if the CEO can highlight some of those, what precautions has been taken to prevent this in future again, and what amounts did we recover. Then secondly, I just want to highlight this whole project coming now a long way, that's road to rail, and it's all about cost and time for the client. Will Transnet be able to really compete with heavy transport in South Africa on the roads? Will it be cost-wise for a client to actually go road to rail for his products to be delivered at another point? And as you all know, we're actually struggling at this point in time with our main roads in South Africa, and it is caused by heavy transport on those roads, that the road is deteriorating in a fast lane. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Marais. I hope the Transnet team has captured what you said, because when you were speaking, you were sort of losing a lot of. Hello, who's that? I think there was somebody coming in. Okay, let's go to Honorable Komani or Mawotwe.
Yes.
Mawotwe, are you back? And you can only repeat, Honorable Marais, if your signal will improve from the previous one.
I can do it quickly, in a few words, if needed.
Yeah.
In short, it is about the road to rail. If we will be cost effective versus heavy transport companies, will it be effective? Will Transnet be effective as far as cost is concerned, and time? Because that is what's essential for any client making use of Transnet for that purpose. And secondly, did we get right to get funds back that's been contracts that's illegally approved as far as state capture is concerned. Thank you.
Okay, that was better. Thank you, Honorable Madam. Honorable Maotwe. Honorable Maotwe. Komani. Okay. Let's go to Honorable Mkwanazi. Honorable Mkwanazi. Honorable Mkwanazi.
Thanks, Chairperson. I'm sorry about the delay.
Okay.
I want to also come after Baba Gumede in supporting the report. We really appreciate the comprehensive report presented by Transnet. Chairperson, I only have, I think, two. One is any sufficient appropriate step taken against the officials who has incurred fruitless and wasteful expenditure, if they can elaborate on that, on the financial side. Secondly, Chair, I would love to get from the board members, if possible, if they're in attendance, to what corrective actions are they taking against the non-performance in the shareholders' compact. That will be all from me, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Mkwanazi. Honorable Buthelezi. Inkosi Buthelezi. Ayiko. Okay. Honorable Kwangwa. Honorable Kwangwa. Nayagek. Okay. Go back to Piri. Honorable Piri.
Thanks, Chair. I hope I'm audible, but let me start by
audible this time around.
Let me start by apologizing if my background might be bad. I'm in an event of my constituents. Maybe for the sound it's loud, but I've tried to get inside the car. But let me also join and greet members and officials, also board members of Transnet, and go straight to the question. Or let me start by, Chair, trying to applaud the department under these circumstances, economic challenges of COVID-19. They've really overcome and worked well as an SOE rather than other SOEs. But let me join colleagues to applaud them and say we are really proud and they must keep it up. But Chair, on the basis of procurement and contract, we are observing the same sequence that has happened last year, to say there are documents that they are required by the auditors and they are not found. But we are just saying to the department or the Transnet, what is it that you are doing to address these challenges, that you are not your documents are not found in time when they are needed by the AG. And I'm also covered by Honorable Mkwanazi on the issue of non-performance in the shareholders compact. Let me pause this, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, Honorable Piri. Honorable Chabalala.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Let's appreciate the presentation that was done, well presented by Memula. I think she represents very well. Look, this is the financial performance. There is a bit of concerns there. One, I want to immediately go to issues that perhaps the committee would want to register, specifically to corrective actions that Transnet has taken in addressing what the auditor deemed as effective steps that were not taken to prevent fruitless and wasteful expenditure amounting to 108 million 2019 to 484 million, as disclosed in Note 39 of the consolidated and separate financial statements, as required by sections, and I don't want to quote the sections of PFMA, you will know that the majority of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure was caused by poor contract management and inappropriate delegation of authority. Second part to that is that the consequence management, and this is what also the auditor says, that they were unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence that disciplinary steps were taken against officials who had incurred irregular expenditure as required by Section 51 of PFMA and its subsections. This was due to proper and complete records that were not maintained as evidence to support the investigations into irregular expenditure. And furthermore, it says disciplinary steps were not taken against some of the officials who had incurred or permitted irregular expenditure as required by Section 5 of the PFMA. So the point there that is made is that the disciplinary proceedings that were not taken on board, I want to know why and what is it that we're going to do, because part of this report speaks about the irregular, fruitless, wasteful expenditure. We're really worried about it. If there's deviations, you need to tell us, but we want to find out what is it that you're going to do. Then there's matters on procurement and contract management, that sufficient appropriate audit evidence could not be obtained for 3 contracts that were awarded in accordance with the legislative requirements, as management indicated that one of the contracts, the information was requested from a storage service provider, but documents could not be located, and for the other 2 contracts, the information could not be found. Similar non-compliance was also reported in the prior year. The question becomes, what is Transnet doing to address this finding? Secondly, what corrective action is Transnet taking against non-performance in the shareholder compacts? That brings me to just want to say, moving forward, perhaps people like your Chief Procurement Officer by the name of Rezani Nemukura, it will be important to interact with such, including the Audit Executive, Brian Komo, including the Group Chief Executive, of course, Ms. Portia. And now that's part of the leadership and part of this fruitless expenditure we want to hear. But what is the moving forward? What is that we're going to do to contain such things that we don't see them happening? But what's happening with these 3 contracts and information that was not required? Now, Transnet in its report, it says that it wants to invest 153.5 billion. And the challenges around rail, port, and pipeline. Now, the question is that this is part of those infrastructure plans that we saw where President speaks about the recovery plan. I want to know what is that we're going to do to avoid irregular expenditure. But second to that, the issue of industrialization, very prudent and crucial. Are we going to see more on local companies benefiting insofar as this billion that you want to invest, and what guarantees do we have? Somewhere in the report it speaks about BBBE, where you complied about 1.2%, if not 2%. What is the status quo moving forward? We know the issues of the court order around that. However, because we're reporting on this financial year, I want to know moving forward how we're going to deal with it. The aim in improving performance and increasing the volume of freight transported by rail, if you can expand on that. So the department is investigating the implications of giving effect to the National Ports Act, of course, of 2005, and the volume transported on rail by Transnet having decreased from 226.3 million tons in 2017 and 18 to 215.1 million tons in 2018-19. If you can also expand on that, I'm very much interested to understand it. And there's parts where you speak about the company having had generated some profit of 6.6 billion in 2018. There's lots of financial year that you account for. I just want to know, as much as we would have generated all this net profit, to what end does it really benefit the operations and the challenges that we're having at this point? The part on infrastructure dilapidation, if not issues of corrupt elements that we saw the stealing, what are we going to do really? And have you engaged with transport, especially around the security of this matter? Is there any plan? By now, we should be having any plan if we're going to invest in this infrastructure as we move forward. If you don't really have to go to detail, you can even give it to us in writing. But I think it's very important that we would want to monitor and as part of oversight body to make sure that we do that. Now, when you were reporting or rather presenting, you spoke about private sector, that you want to approach the shareholder. I'm not sure, was it in the port where you're experiencing challenges? I want to know, what is your intention of approaching the shareholder or cabinet for you? Because you said you want to approach them to enhance the issue of private participation. What is your intention when you want that private participation? Is there any conditions that you're thinking about to whose benefit it's going to benefit, and at what percentages we're looking at, if you be able to share that with us? The last point is on the training. I think you are training about 2.7% of labor costs was spent, in fact, in the report, on training, and that you were focusing on artisans, engineers, and engineering technicians. So I want to know, where are they? All those people that were counting, that were training, where are they? Can they be traced? Where are they located? And I'll tell you, because of this high youth unemployment that we're seeing, and the report covers that. We are proud of Transnet. We have a future in Transnet, and that is no doubt about it. In fact, we want to see it performing even more. But what are we doing with all this training and investing so much money on it? It is something else to train and bring people inside the industry, but if they cannot come back again in the market, or rather you are able to, your investment, you should be able to see value for it. I think for me, it's very, very important that we see that happening. But really, my biggest worry as well is on the theft, the scale of amount of this theft, even on issues of petroleum, and if where are we around that? If you can really assist us. I mean, we know our economy is very weak, and the report cites cumulative irregular expenditure that we're seeing over time. But what are the positive proposals that you can really give us and put on paper for us to consider? Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Shabalala. Let's go to the Transnet team.
Honorable Chair, thank you. Can I request that Nonkululeko Sandra Kutsia maybe also answer some of the ones, especially the ones that have to do with the cases. I'm not sure, Chair, given the fact that you, Chair of the board, you need to leave earlier, would you like to answer any questions that relate to the board? Chair. Honorable Chair, will continue. Any board member, I don't know if we've lost connection.
Sorry, but the chair is still online. Perhaps let's continue. He will come in whatever time he is getting an opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I will ask Nonkululeko to deal with Honorable Gumede's questions, as they had a lot to do with the PFMA and performance.
Thank you, Portia. So just maybe on the PFMA related questions, and I note that it's a matter that kind of cuts across through all the committee members' questions. Chair, it is an issue that pains us a lot and concerns us a lot to find ourselves with a 3-year in a row qualified audit opinion and on one and the same issue. And I think because Advocate Kutsia is on the line, I would like to give off to her as well to add some comments. So, Chair, to the point that's been made, these issues seem to date back as far as 2011, 2012. However, our reporting approach was not strong. So these things occurred, but we never reported. And as the 2018 in Transnet, there was a number of changes, including the start of the new board, which was around May 2018. We also view it in some good light because it actually indicates the strides that were made by the board at the start, but also the start of the AG, because as we understand, the AG started coming closer to Transnet around 2018. And therefore the reporting started to improve. And however, because one could say it was not, it was largely neglected or not given the focus it required in 2012, what it has done is that as we started to report in 2018-19, it's the backlog that is causing the issue of the qualification. Because, Chair, if you look at the new contracts that have been placed since the starting of reporting in 2018, we do see quite a difference in what we are reporting, in that there is the placement of the new contracts is much more compliant. And therefore, going forward, what we do expect to see is that if any reporting has to happen, it will relate to legacy contracts, because Transnet, by the nature of its business, our contracts are fairly long term. So we do have contracts that stay open for 5 to 7 years. However, as we know the requirements of PFMA, we have to report as we incur the expenditure. And therefore, if we didn't catch the contract as irregular in 2014, 2015, but we continue to incur the expenditure in that contract in 2020, 2021, we have to report that expenditure as irregular in the year. And therefore, you will note that we have continued to reopen the prior year balances to try and report what comes from prior years. And Chair, we have indeed set ourselves up as a team to basically strengthen the controls, try and automate more, but also ensure that the new contracts are less non-compliant, whilst we focus as a team on identifying all the legacy contracts that might have irregular expenditure. And it is quite a task for us, but we have set ourselves up to deal with it. On the comment around the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, I do want to highlight that as well. It's an issue that we don't want to see happening. And in the context of trying to deal with consequences, and Sandra will comment on that, we have a process that Exco must get a monthly report from the ODs on the consequence management. And some of the consequence management requires training, which is why we are highlighting that the training is going to be a significant part of our work. So in terms of what we see on page 128 of our financials, which talks to fruitless and wasteful expenditure, Chair, I do want to highlight that, in fact, it is still high at 108 million, but it is an improvement compared to the 2019 number, which was a 484 million. So we continue to focus on ensuring that the fruitless and wasteful expenditure year on year is monitored and reduced. I'm going to just ask Sandra to comment on some of the activity in relation to consequence management and the work she's doing to deal with what has been picked up.
Thank you, Nonkululeko, and good morning, honourable members. I will speak to, as Nonkululeko had indicated, some of the initiatives that we're undertaking as part of the consequence management. As honourable members had alluded, it's not just a matter of taking disciplinary action and recovery of losses, but also training and to ensure a prevention and an arrest of root causes that lead to the irregular expenditure. And so in that regard, we are updating our course material with regard to PFMA and triple PFA training. And the training will be rolled out across the business, across all employees of the business as an annual mandatory initiative. That's on the preventative side. Nonkululeko has also spoken about the improvement in controls, both on the financial and on the procurement side, to prevent a recurrence of irregular expenditure. What we must recognize, however, is that some of the expenditure that occur year on year that emanate from a single procurement event, which involved some irregularity, will continue to be reported as irregular expenditure unless, one, the contract is terminated, or two, the expenditure is condoned by the National Treasury. Now, in relation to some of those contracts, especially those where there had been no fruitless and wasteful expenditure, operational requirements dictated that we have to continue with expenditure against those contracts. And some of the irregularities in some of the contracts are not necessarily that material, but speak to non-compliance in terms of reporting, for instance, to the CIDB with regard to the percentage participation in subcontracts. So it does not necessarily mean that each event of irregular expenditure necessarily results in fruitless and wasteful expenditure and involved fraud and corruption. What we are doing is we are going through the process of ensuring line by line with regard to all of our current contracts that we can clearly determine whether each event of irregular expenditure would have involved fruitless and wasteful expenditure and would have involved fraud and corruption. That is a process that we are embarking on in batch form with a view to completing the exercise before we enter into the next financial year. And I wish to refer honourable members to National Treasury Instruction Note 2 of May 2019, which creates the instrument whereby state-owned companies can apply for condonation, thus the pardoning of an action, a procurement event or a failure to report, whatever that may be, for that to be pardoned and for the to stop the continuation of irregular expenditure. We are in the process, as Nonkululeko had indicated, of detecting all the irregular expenditure, which the auditors have indicated was not necessarily complete. But for National Treasury to condone that action of irregular expenditure, Transnet must also show that we've completed the investigatory processes that would transparently disclose fraud and corruption, and that would transparently disclose the disciplinary action as well as the recovery of losses and the referral of criminal complaints in relation to an irregular expenditure where it is applicable. We are intensifying as Transnet our collaboration with all the law enforcement agencies to improve our ability to follow through on disciplinary action, the recovery of losses, and criminal prosecutions. We've established a strategic coordination forum with all of these agencies to, and we meet on a regular basis to ensure that our combined efforts achieve traction in giving effect to our obligations to ensure that we get these irregular expenditures also condoned by the National Treasury. I think it's also an opportune time to give feedback to honourable members that over the financial year under discussion, Transnet has already taken disciplinary action against 14 senior managers, most of whom had already left the organization. Some of the disciplinary action is still under due process, either through arbitration or at the Labour Court, but that is underway. Honourable members may have also noted reports this week with regard to the assets of one of those executives having been seized by the SIU. That action is a very good example of the results that we are showing in our collaboration with the SIU. That whole process was co-managed by Transnet and the SIU. So through the intensified activities with the SIU and other law enforcement agencies, Transnet will in the coming months intensify its recovery of losses, disciplinary action, and referral of criminal proceedings. Thank you, Nonkululeko. I hope that satisfies, but I'm open for further questions. Yeah. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson.
Chairperson Portia had wanted me to say something. I was struggling with, for some reason, I had technical problems this side. I just want to add to what Sandra is saying, just one aspect. We were asked the question, have you recovered any monies? How much have you recovered? We reported previously, and we said so also at the Zondo Commission and in public, that we have recovered 618 million from China South Rail, which was money that was paid to them in advance. And of course, we were due to recover another 180 million from regiments. Unfortunately, an action to liquidate them was instituted before we got our money. But that claim continues. It's something that Sandra and the team at the NPA, SIU, and the Hawks would deal with. We had also issued letters of demands to a number of executives with regard to those monies that we believe the company lost as a result of their gross negligence. But there are other monies that are being pursued. I know the GCE and the team are continuing to engage, for example, with regard to those matters that relate to the interest swaps pertaining to the monies of the pension fund and monies that Transnet itself had lost. It's a subject of continuous engagement, but we are pursuing these matters. Chairperson, that's all I want to say, and I'd like, if it pleases the chairperson, to please be excused so that I can go to the next meeting.
Yes, you are released, Dr. Popomolife. Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
And your contribution. Thank you. We are still continuing listening to the responses.
Chairperson, this is Gratitude Rampaka, a board member. There was also a question raised on the non-performance against the shareholder impact. I think at the beginning of the meeting, Portia introduced an almost new management team. That is testament to the board's determination to address non-performance. And we are working with the new team to ensure that whatever goals are set from the shareholder department are met. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chair, can we, wanted to, sorry?
Nobody interrupted you.
Oh, okay. So it's on the issue of road to rail. It's quite, I mean, if I may, I might even sort of like touch on some of the questions that are linked to even the issue of private sector participation, if I may, Chair. Road to rail, it's possible within a certain limit. Remember, in the end, rail is competitive relative to road at any distance greater than 300 kilometers. Less than 300 kilometers road is more competitive, and it makes sense. And it's difficult for railways to be able to compete against road. In our case, the regulation in South Africa has meant that road actually doesn't carry its full cost. So its pollution, its actual impact on roads. So in the end, because it doesn't pay its full cost, it becomes a much cheaper option. That's one, but let's park that and come back to a next issue, which we don't often talk about. When in the recent while, when the president issued the statement around allowing private sector access to the transport, to the TFR system, look, we're still trying to understand what that means. But the long and the short of it, when we've started talking to some of the companies who are anxious to participate, the only thing we have said to them was, happiness that you come and you participate in the system, but please understand that you have to belong to the same bargaining council that we belong to. Because one of the issues that we all have to deal with is the cost, the structure of the labor industry that we compete in, that we operate in. They need to belong to the same structure, because effectively, if we don't ensure that that's the case, we would have left ourselves basically having to compete with people whilst we tie back one of our hands behind our back, and that just is insane. Because in principle, the ownership of the state and the ownership of the private sector is of no fundamental consequence as far as how we in the end operate. We should not be anti-competitive in our behavior. Completely agree with that. And so very much comfortable whenever people take us to the court, Competition Commission, and then we get tested in that process on whether we are uncompetitive, anti-competitive or not. However, if the private sector is going to play in the same space that we play in, they must play by the same rules that we play. They should not be saved to have special rules. So, Honourable Member, I want to, Shabalala, when you asked the question about the conditions for private sector participation, absolutely clear that on the risk and reward side, we cannot have the old-fashioned situation where the public sector takes all of the risks, so we socialize the risk and we are responsible, and the private sector privatizes the rewards. That's just can't happen, and it's insane to do a thing like that. And so we'd be pushing back that there should be a fair share between risk and reward in the process. And frankly, if we're not able to get to equity, and as far as that's concerned, our view is that Transnet or the state should continue to be the provider of the service, and then you use the regulator. We are firm supporters of the economic regulatory bill that the Department of Transport is planning to implement, because it is one way to ensure that whenever people feel that any of our entities, including TFR, has been unfair, you can take us under review with the transport regulator. So I think for what we are sure about those, so that we are not seen as if we are anti-private sector participation, we know for a fact that there would be greater dynamism, even on our side, if there were other players in the system, for sure. We know that there would be more jobs actually created if there were other people in the system. Because as I indicated to you, honorable members, our problem is not a demand problem. Our problem in part is a supply problem. At the end of the day, I will tell you that at some point during the worst of COVID, Velile and I, CEO of TPT, had a chat, and we said, damn, we might, oh, excuse the language, we might have been in a better position. They are saying Zoshawa because I use words. We would be in quite a lot of, in a much stronger position if we had had other private operators either in the containers, because then we might have been able to have a call a friend situation where we might have been able to ask someone else to come and help us in some of our operations. True, we did reach out to the private sector, and to be honest, a lot of companies did come to support us, but the robustness of the system is fundamentally improved if we are able to have other players. Honorable members, I do want to go back to a little bit to this issue of irregular expenditure, because what we often don't contrast properly, there's the one monster, which is irregular expenditure. To my mind, the bigger monster actually is fruitless and wasteful expenditure. When you have irregular expenditure, it's not like you didn't get the thing. There isn't value that was created. We may have contravened Transnet's own procedures, and hence the whole comprehensive review that we've undertaken. And we're in the process of undertaking of procurement, so that we simplify the very same processes and procedures that we have to follow in Transnet, so that it's easy for all of our people to comply, firstly. But sometimes we contravene the CIDB rules, right? And the CIDB rules say that 30% of every tender that we have must be to smaller companies. I'm sorry, members, I don't remember what is the minimum amount from which size tender. That's fair enough, and we need to address that and resolve. And then sometimes we contravene the PFMA. Now, on contravening the PFMA, and this I'm still talking fruitless and wasteful expenditure, I want to reflect on a case which we have, which finally we had to sort of like face squarely which monster we're going to deal with. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure, which we believe is even bigger, because that's expenditure which has no return to the operation whatsoever, or irregular expenditure, where you then contravene the office of the Chief Procurement Officer. Now, if you look at the PFMA, under Section 54, there is a requirement that the shareholder must return to you with an answer in 30 days. On the Chief Procurement Officer, there is no requirement that they must report to you in 30 days. Now, you are a commercial enterprise. In the situation that we're facing, where we're going to be forced to compete with the private sector, they have no PFMA. They have no office of the Chief Procurement Officer that they must comply with. They are just in the market to make sure that they win that business, and they win it as fast as possible. In our case, if we do not get a response from the Chief Procurement Officer in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months, in 4 months, in 5 months, we can do nothing until we get, because we run the risk of irregular expenditure. So members, we've got 208 locomotives which are waiting to date, so that we can get permission to go and buy space before we can be able to move them. Now, remember I said our problem is not demand, it's supply. If we were able to move the 208 locals, we would suddenly be able to meet the demand that we have, at least to the extent that we are not dealing with cable theft on the one hand, and to the extent that we are not dealing with other operational efficiencies, because I also don't want to create the impression that that's our only problem. But I just want members to understand that real life is a little bit harder when you're trying to balance out irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So Nonkulego was just reminding me that I should come back on that, is that the irregular expenditure that we definitely need to find a long-term solution for is that package that is tied up with the, what shall we call, the state capture years, the 1064s, and all of that. We need to resolve on that one, absolutely. But there's the irregular expenditure where we have to face the monster of you either have fruitless and wasteful, or you have irregular. And in the future, we're going to have to be balancing out the fact that the private sector is going to eat our lunch, and we need to make sure that we do something. So more often than not, when our customers are mad with us, they're mad with us because we're not reliable. And we're not reliable because we have these other things that we have to be responding to. One of the issues that I think it was Honorable Member Piri who asked about this thing about documents that were not readily available for the auditors. I think Nonkulego has answered that question in part, but it also is tied up with the modernization of our IT systems and our IT processes. Another issue, when we arrived, we found that there'd been a complete outsource of our IT systems. And it's only now with the CIO that we've started rebuilding the capability so that we can be able to have at least a hybrid model where we have some services provided by third parties, because there's actually some value in having that, but also there's some internal capacity. Amongst the major projects that we have is the establishment of a shared services center, which would then ensure that we finally make electronic all of this documentation. Is it going to be easy? No. Is it going to be fast? No. We anticipate that this is probably a 3-year exercise. And as Nonkulego has already indicated, on our contracts, we have like 13,000 contracts that we have to review, both for are they irregular, number one, and number two, are we paying the right price? Are we paying the price that the market pays, or have we paid a Transnet premium? One of the things that we started as soon as Vuleno Makule started was to actually immediately indicate to the market that we will no longer be buying from third parties, middlemen and the rest and the like, but that we would buying directly from manufacturers. That ties up Honorable Member Chabalala's question around how we're making sure that our procurement is beneficial to local industry and local suppliers as well. Is that on the industrialization, Honorable Chair, I think if you gave us a little bit of 6 months, because we're starting to work with our R&D unit, which we find actually is quite significant, and actually quite a significant amount of money that we spend in that area. And our R&D teams actually have a very deep knowledge of the capability in South Africa, and are actually very interested in actually supporting small, medium enterprises to meet some of our quality and standard demands. There's a lot more issues to discuss around that. Happy to have a separate discussion about some of the things that we are finding and some of the necessary changes that we are making so that we can genuinely have a procurement system and an operating model that has a stimulatory effect on industry. I think I've answered most. Oh, and the question around TFR volumes going down. It's a problem, partly, Chair, as a result of the MDS of a few years ago. It had forecast a much higher economic growth rate than what has turned out to be the case. And so the investments were way above the forecast growth rate that had been anticipated. And so the volume that we thought we would get never arose. And so what Caesar and her team, as well as Andrew, are doing is sort of like getting to a point where we understand what is the total capacity that the system has. And then on the back of what's the total capacity the system has, what is the volumes that we would be able to meet, given these constraints of local availability and cable theft, whilst we improve operational effectiveness. I think I'd like to, oh, thank you. Oh, and then the issue, the one question that we asked about training. So we train a lot. Apologies, members. Honorable members, we train a lot, but we don't train enough. And when I say we don't train enough, we could train much more given the installed capacity that we have. So for example, TE has about 22 training centers right throughout the country. And we've just never been able to utilize the 3,000 seats that we have on an annual basis. And given the issue of unemployment that we have, we're also quite clear that an urgent need is to create skills where people are able to use their hands. Now, unfortunately, our position is that we actually don't create most of those jobs inside Transnet. We're already at 56,000, generally right across the board. We are of the view that we are significantly overstaffed, so we cannot absorb much more. But what we want to ensure is that we train at a level that as other players come into the system, they're able to find skilled personnel. We have recently appointed a senior executive whose job it is to consolidate all of our training capacities under a Transnet Training Academy, so that we would be able to get to a point where we optimize our truly substantial training budget, because we have set a target that we want to remain as a level 2 BEE. That means that we've got to spend here around 800 million rand on all of the training, both for internal people and the training that we want to make available for external staff. So some of them we've employed. Many of them, unfortunately, we've not been able to employ directly. Collaboration with transport departments or dilapidated infrastructure. Oh, and then the issue of dilapidated infrastructure, but also cable theft. We are working quite closely with PRASA. At this stage, the CEO of PRASA and the CEO of TFR are the two coordination points of all of the issues that we have to deal with between ourselves and PRASA, but also to see how we might be able to improve security on the system so that we deal with cable theft. However, both organizations have had to look at how we deploy and what's our security strategy. Where do we hire our own? How do we hire outsourced security company as well? But also, what's the extent and the usage of technology? Since we've started deploying drones on an active basis, we've actually been having quite a significant amount of successes in the arrest both of cable theft and also in the area of fuel theft. Honorable Chair, I think I have covered most, if not all, according to my side and on our sides.
Thank you so much, Ms. Debbie. Can we perhaps check if there is any quick follow-up, honorable members? I'm checking the, okay, Shabalala.
Right, thank you so much, Chairperson. I don't think it's necessarily a follow-up, just to comment really, just parting short. I hear what Sandra says around, and of course what Portia says on the fruitless, wasteful expenditure, and what are the challenges there. And she draws our attention to note 2 around part of the options applying to Treasury for condemnation. However, I still want Sandra perhaps also pay attention to that note 39, where issues of separate financial statements that are required, and that's where majority of this fruitless, wasteful expenditure it's there. But part of it, what is highlighted, is poor consolidation poor contract management rather, and inappropriate delegation of authority. And it's something within the apparel that they can fix. And I think, Sandra, it's something that we need to do perhaps moving forward. And I hear what Portia says around, the private sector, the issues of your locomotives and how they participate. And of course, they're not under the Treasury, not only Treasury, but the PFMA. So at times you might not get, the responses you need from the chief financial procurement officer. But I think it's something for us to correct, so that when we come back for the third financial year, and at least we don't have this qualified audit opinion. I think you can do it and your team can do it. You've seen where's the problem, and we understand the reporting lines is something that must be clear to Treasury, so that they don't find you qualified audit or things that at times you don't have much control over, and you are able to submit in writing, so the reasons where you are, because it's not a good state of affairs to have qualified audit opinions over the 3 financial years, if not 2. So I think it's very important when we come back to this committee, we can only hope that when we come, we'll be celebrating with you the unqualified audit, and one has confidence that it's something that can be done. Portia, on the matter of private equity partner, and that's why President, and when he spoke to the recovery plan about downscaling, or rather for us to be able to look into these investments, as much as we are committed to that, I'm happy when you say that you have approached that, and I like how you put it, is that the part of the reasons why is that the issue of risk and reward, there must be a fair share around that, so that you don't only carry the burden as the state on the risk, but also the private sector, the same investment is able to also carry the risk associated with that. For myself, Chairperson, I think what's important is for us just to have a bit of, from Portia's side, to have transparency on this equity partnerships that we're able to make. As much as there are many that would have came, let's have transparency so that we're able to do oversight with yourselves, as in when they happen, then we don't find ourselves at the back foot of all these matters. I think for me, I like how you put it. What is the reason why you would want that? That's something that I would have wanted you to elaborate, and you've done that. The issues of jobs, and that is very important. I think, Chairperson, let me leave it at that. Just safe to say that I'm really confident, and thank you so much, Portia, to the entire leadership. I think you're doing very well. Thanks, Chairperson.
Okay, Honorable Shabalala, is there anyone who want to just have a final bite to give back to the Transnet team?
Chair?
Yes, Honorable Gumede.
No, Chair, I just want to comment on, it's not minor, but it's serious. It shouldn't have come from the group CEO that the irregular spending is better than the fruitless. Because at times we may interpret that as it's done deliberately. Financially, yes, according to what she says, it's better. But it's not something that you can stand on a platform and say it's better because the money is not lost. But at the end of the day, it does impact on perhaps your assessment in terms of the Auditor General. So I'm saying you keep it because it happens by, well, coincidentally, not that we are aiming to do it, but when you come to defend it, then it's not a correct thing. So that's the only thing I wanted to comment on. It may be true, we're debating it as well on the other previous discussions, that when you say the money is lost, what exactly do you mean? In as far as the fruitless expenditure and all those things. So it may start with the irregular, and then it may end up being something else bigger. So that's the only thing, Chair, I wanted to comment on. Thank you very much.
Okay. If there is no one else who would like to say something, I will have to give to Ms. Debbie for final wrap up of this contribution.
Honorable Chair, if I may.
Yes, I've given you.
Oh, okay, thanks. I wasn't sure. So I do want to come back to the point that Honorable Gumede sort of raises. So that we are clear, we manage the irregular expenditure as much as we manage the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, one. Number two, as a Schedule 2 company, we actually borrow money, not just in South Africa, we borrow it globally. We are constantly dealing with the problem. And in fact, sadly, even in South Africa, by the way, that many people don't understand what irregular expenditure is. They see irregular expenditure as if it was some fraudulent transaction. So one of the things that we've been talking to Treasury, and we've raised it with the AG, is that maybe there's an argument that so it's not about, we want to make full disclosure and be completely transparent on all of those issues and report instead to Parliament as a special reporting requirement on fruitless and irregular, but no longer include that in our annual financial statements, because fruitless will report directly whatever fruitless is, because fruitless, there's something funny that happened. But irregular expenditure is, as I indicate, Chair, is that we have to compete in the market. We have customers who are supposed to get product. Now, you cannot give us a mandate that says reduce the cost of logistics, move cargo in South Africa, because when we don't move cargo in South Africa, we actually bottleneck the economy. So the point that I was trying to make, so that the honourable member is clear, is that we are absolutely committed to a transparent, well-run organization which is completely compliant. But we also have to be able to deliver on that other dimension, which is our core mandate. So as a leadership team, in fact, we would really appreciate to have a session with the committee in camera, and we just talk you through some of the challenges that we face, and especially as we're going to a situation where we're going to bring in private players into the system who do not have to deal with some of the requirements that we're, and bearing in mind, Honorable Chair, some of them actually are listed on the JSE. So the transparency and the reporting requirements that they have are exactly the same as ours. So the intention is not to hide or to lie or anything like that, but the intention is to be upfront and be pretty honest with you with some of the decisions and the choices that have to be made, and the situation that we are caught in. And I know that this is not a special situation that just applies to Transnet. It's the same for all Schedule 2s who have to compete or have to provide to the services to the private sector so that the economy is able to grow. Thank you, Chair. But thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present to yourselves.
Portia, can I just come in there also to try and clarify or better highlight what I hear you saying, because we have talked about this. Chairman, this is Mpole Tlape, one of the board members. What in fact our group chief executive is trying to do without saying it out loud is that portfolio committee, we as Transnet need your help in convincing Treasury and to some degree the AG, and maybe to another degree the department itself, that sometimes we get into irregular expenditure because of the length of times we have to wait for responses from Treasury, from some other government department or agency or another organization for things that we need to move ahead on. And we are unable to move ahead on because we wait for inordinate lengths of times for some decisions that will help us move on. For instance, if we have a contract coming to end and we need some permissions from Treasury or one other to be able to move with that contract. Sometimes the responses are so long in coming that we find ourselves continuing with a contract that, because we need that service or we need that product, and we can't do without it for us to be able to deliver to government. So, Portia, I think that yes, we do need to ask for a session with the portfolio committee and actively request their assistance in getting over some of the bottlenecks that force the organization into irregular expenditure. Please comment on that. Ke a leboha, Chair.
Yes, I thought Mayor was trying, the board member was trying to ask you, Ms. Debbie, to say something again.
Portia, if you could just say something about some of the things that force us into having fruitless, rather irregular expenditure whilst we're waiting for responses from Treasury or from somebody else.
So, I mean, we have, Honorable Chair, I mean, thanks, we have a situation. So with the fuel theft, unfortunately, sometimes they do get it right, that they puncture the pipe itself. When they puncture the pipeline, the fuel spills, and then it creates an environmental hazard. Now, we never had as many as we have now. So as I speak to you now, we've exceeded the budget, but the period of the contract is until March, I think, next year, 2021. So we write to Treasury because unfortunately there's a particular protocol that you have to follow to clear up the spill. And this is as per the National Environmental Management Act. And we write and we indicate we have done everything that we can. We've squeezed everyone that we can. And we remember in TPL, we now have a new CEO. We have done, and we ask for an allocation for the rest of the remaining months, once we then start, because you also, by rules, by the way, you cannot start a procurement process until the previous contract has closed, right? Irrespective of the fact that the money is finished. So we write to Treasury and we say, can we get an additional allocation of funding? I think the additional amount that we had required was just over 168 million rand. We get a response which says, you can only spend 50 million rand. Now, what are we to do? We are given 50 million rand. They say we can only spend 50 million rand. That 50 million rand we know will not carry us until the end of March, one. Number two, we know will not do the cleanup that we are obligated under NEMA to undertake. And we also know that we can only appoint a new service provider until after the 31st of March. So what are we to do in a situation like that? So that members understand it's never taken lightly, is that in a situation like that, it would be, we would be contravening NEMA Act if we don't clear the spillage. But over and above that, remember, some of our spillages happen next to communities. They happen next to areas where children, there's water, there's all kinds of issues that we have to deal with. So we have to worry about the broader societal impact. So it really is a big problem. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Group Chief Executive, Ms. Portia Davy, and the team from Transnet. I just want to check if the DG would like to just come in with some few words.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Chairperson, what needed to be said has been said. We are quite cognizant of the challenges that Transnet is faced with. in rolling back the damage that had been done to the business as reflected in the irregular expenditure that has been reported. There are indeed, as been said, some of the standards that inform how irregular expenditure is reported is an area that of ongoing discussion between ourselves and National Treasury on how those could be changed to ensure that the new team like this one that has come into Transnet is not burdened, so to speak, with the history of the entity, because as long as a contract is in effect, as long as it was declared irregular, any expenditure associated with it would result in irregular expenditure. And that's one of the challenges that the team has been faced with. But we are, from the department, we are pleased with the strides that we see the business taking despite very difficult trading conditions and a very difficult base that had to be addressed by the board before this team came in. And we are quite confident that going forward, we should be coming back with even better results. On that note, we thank you, Chair, and honorable members for having given us an opportunity to share with South Africans the performance of Transnet in the last financial year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, DG. Also, I would like to say thank you to Transnet for their presentation. I think the committee, if I'm listening to all members of this committee, do appreciate this financial improvement at Transnet. And we hope that the sooner we deal with all the other issues that have been pending for some time, I am mindful of some of these issues will be resolved at the Zondo Commission, NPA, and so on. I think the sooner those issues are dealt with, the better. And I'm happy that there's no much harm that is happening during our term of office in the 6th Parliament from last year. Most of the wrong actions or activities took place some time ago, and our administration, by the way, is more to do with the mopping up and clean all these problems that has taken place previously. And we don't want to add other problems on top of the problems created by the past administration. Therefore, we would like to see a lot of improvement. That's why our members become sensitive at times with some of the terms that are coming up. We would like to see that commitment, that aggressive commitment from the executive of Transnet, including the entire leadership of Transnet. But we appreciate that for now, I think they are still doing a good job. Transnet remain our panado currently as compared to other entities, though we must not be too comfortable. I think we must improve so that Transnet can contribute in the improvement of this economy of the country. I think the Transnet is central in that particular responsibility. But also I've taken note of the commitment that has been, I don't know whether it's a promise or a commitment or a will from the side of the group chief executive when she mentioned that we can have a session in camera to take us through as a portfolio committee into confidence on some of the challenges faced Transnet. I'm looking forward to see us going to that particular session so that we can be in a position to be answered and probe anything, and then the executive is free to tell us and of course put us in confidence on all these, including sensitive matters that are there, so that we can also speak from a position of strength. When you are well informed, you are more empowered to be confident of whatever you say or whatever you are asked. You can be in a position to articulate. Therefore, we are very happy that Transnet remain an example currently, and we don't want to reverse. I must emphasize that we want to go forward. Thank you to the chairperson of this council, including the members of the council, led by Dr. Popo Molefe. We appreciated your presence and your contribution in this session. Without missing anyone, thank you to the staff. Thank you to the honorable members for their contribution. I think they are assisting some of the concerns we are raising as members of the committee. We are not trying to create some unnecessarily hostility or something. We are trying to assist. We are committed to help Transnet to go high, to be a model of our country, to be the best contributor in the fiscals instead of taking from fiscals. With all those words, honorable members, Transnet executive and the board members, the Department of Public Enterprise, and our political leadership, honorable minister and deputy minister in the absentia. Thank you very much. The session is adjourned.
Long live
Thank
the
you.
chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members, and thank you, honorable chair. Bye. Long live.
Yes, long live the chair.
Yeah.